Okay, so the Good morning. I'm June Wilson, and for the sake of full disclosure, I want you to know this is my first time doing this, and a teleprompter too. Never done that, but I know you people are kind and forgiving, so I'm not going to worry about it. Thank you all in advance. And today, our own Reverend Matt Osbar will be doing the message this morning. So before that, I have a reading from Sheila Shu, Director of Religious Education of the First Unitarian, Rochester, New York. Your breath began long ago, before there were lungs, before there were trees. Your breath began in the darkness of gases that hung a long, long sky from your song. Your bones are the bones of your ancestors, and before them, calcium in the seas. Your bones have been shaped in the darkness of wombs, and long before, and matter flung from your fingertips. Your blood began in the flow of seas, dark and rough. Before your tears, there was rain. And before your blood, veins and springs and storms and the primordial deep way deeper than your pulse. Your curiosity began as lightning across the sky. Your very nerves and every thought, every signal, the descendants of explosions and cosmic firings. Your insight and movement, ancient energies that acted long before your smiling. You are the very stuff of stars. You are the dust left behind. You are a solar event. You are the keepers of time. Your sisters hold their place and shine the sky above you. And you, no less, have such light inside you to offer the world. Can you see that you are a child of the universe? So we want to welcome you with live from Fellowship Hall. It's our LCUUF Sunday service. Welcome. If you are new and would like to receive an email for upcoming services, please talk to a member of the welcome team. We have a table out front, and we'll be glad to get your information if you got by us without doing that. And now we want to welcome our visitors. If you're visiting with us for the first time, or if you're returning or reconnecting with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and tell us where you're from. If you're on Zoom, use the raised hand feature, and we'll ask you to unmute. And if you're in the room, just raise your hand, and Matt will come by with a microphone.
Hi there.
Hi. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My father was a Unitarian. He was at this church. My stepmother, Diane, was married to him, Sheldon James. So I've been here one time prior for his memorial. I'm actually Catholic, and I'm risking my mortal soul to be with you today. And it's a pleasure. Thank you.
I'll give you a Unitarian-style dispensation for one day.
Any others?
Oh.
Hello, I'm Maureen, and I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I'm here for a couple of weeks, and I'm visiting my cousin Heidi, who's a member here.
Great. Welcome. Welcome. And are there any on Zoom?
Now let's switch to those on Zoom. Is there anybody new with us on Zoom?
Doesn't look like it, June. We're all here.
Okie doke. And just a brief note, we offer a wide variety of services here at UU, and we have varied topics presented by our members, outside guests, as well as our minister, Matt, and we hope you will return to sample some of these. So now we come to our lighting the chalice, and I think Matt's going to do that for us. Oh, I thought you were going to light first. Sorry. We come together with our tired minds and bodies, with our confusion and questions, our uncertainties and our fears. We come together with our hopes, with our pasts and our ideas, our passions and our faith. We come together bringing all of who we are, trusting that in gathering we will be renewed, and that together we can create the world we long for. Now let us light our chalice with these words that we sing together.
Rekindle this light in celebration for the life that we share.
Our opening hymn, Come Sing a Song with Me, will be played by Gary.
Let me just welcome Gary Young to our piano here. We are so glad to have him. Yeah.
I'm from here.
I know, but so glad to have you in this space.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
Okay. Now I can say the rest. Thank you, Gary, for playing for us. Our opening hymn is Come Sing a Song with Me. And please rise as you are willing and able and join us in singing. Each week, we take time to remind ourselves that we belong to a community which cares for each other. The sharing of joys, sorrows, and milestones is one way that we practice holding each other in community. We speak what is in our hearts, sharing any significant sorrow or joy in our lives because there is power in the sharing. We will start with the folks in the room, and that will give the people on Zoom time to type in their joys into the chat and then be read aloud by the Zoom host. So first we'll begin with the joys here in the room. Whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or others, please share with us. Are there any joys that people in the room would like to share? Okay.
I'm just happy that Rose is here.
Great.
I'm David. I'm just happy I'm here. I'm very grateful for the feeling of being very loved before, during, and after my surgery earlier in the week.
You stole my thunder, David. I was just going to say I'm so happy my friend David had a successful surgery, even though he's wearing a really funky dress, which I'm going to borrow it. And also, my partner has been gone for almost 7 weeks working in Guanajuato State, and he's coming home today.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, we'll continue this side.
Maybe like many of you, I had the privilege and joy to see the orchestra directed by Michael Record, and I was just so filled with happiness, and it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Okay.
Good morning, I'm Heidi, and my joy is that my mother's sister, my aunt, is here, and she brought my beautiful cousin with her. So I want to let you know that I've had this wonderful month of joys, my friends, and now my aunt and my beautiful cousin.
Okay, great. And coming back into the back here, Roy.
Good morning. Have two kind of joys. One is yesterday was the 4-year anniversary that David and I and 2 cats got on a plane and flew to Mexico to live full time. So 4-year anniversary. And this coming Thursday, our daughter Darby and her boyfriend Michael are coming to visit us for a week, and we're taking them to the beach. So we haven't seen them in a while, so we're looking forward to seeing them.
And over here, okay. Teresa.
Okay. I'm Teresa, and I'm filled with joy that John had cardiac surgical intervention and now has a heart that's very, very healthy. It was 90%, his major artery of the heart was 90% blocked, and now it's fine.
Oh, yeah, wow.
That's everybody? Are there any joys to be shared on Zoom?
Yes, June, we have a couple. One is from Lynn Cleek, who says, please light a candle of joy. I was an AFS exchange student in Uruguay in 1969 and lived with a family for a year. I'm very excited that my favorite sister and brother from there are coming to visit me. They arrive tomorrow for a week. And a joy from me, Colleen. A dozen of us had a lovely circle supper last night at Joni Ward's home. Very grateful for these small gatherings each quarter. And that's it.
I keep trying to get out of the picture and I'm getting further in.
Sorry, there's one more.
Sorrows now. Let us voice our sorrows, whatever you or the world may be holding and the need of our healing and caring thoughts. Are there any sorrows that people in the room would like to share? So, you want to light the candle for it, Heidi, or do you want me to? Yes, I know, but
And now it's gone away. Here we are. Good morning. And you heard my name a few minutes ago. I'm Heidi. And yesterday morning, I heard from Joan Bellamy. And she asked me to convey a message to all of her friends. And this is her message. It is with overwhelming sadness that I tell my friends in Mexico, New Mexico, and beyond, that the multiple issues we have read about among teen girls has come to my family. Last week, my 19-year-old granddaughter, Miranda, whose junior and senior years in high school were spent on Zoom, and who was struggling at the time with both anxiety and depression, as well as her own developing non-binary gender. By non-binary gender identity, and ended her life in her freshman dorm at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, where she was studying science and had received a scholarship. She had been taking meds and seeing a therapist for a few years. We are beyond sad that she could not see her way through to the other side of her despair. Her whole family has been supportive of her choices. She used they, them to identify and had changed her name to Ren last year. Today, I read about wrens, which despite their small, fragile form as birds, can assert themselves over birds much larger and stronger by virtue of their quick thinking. They are symbolically considered a harbinger of spring and rebirth. And I think if only it were so for her. I'm asking all those folks who are also Joan's friends on Facebook not to post anything at this time on Facebook. She is, and her family wants some time. Joan's in Europe right now, so she's communicating via internet and so on with the rest of the family. Thank you for your time.
Are there any others? No. Excuse me. Are there any other sorrows in the room?
Before I speak, I'm feeling the need to just take a moment to breathe with that information and hold Joan in our hearts. Wow. I'm Devorah, and 2 days ago I got an article from my hometown, Keene Sentinel, that had a headline that said, Keene couple in crash in Vermont. So of course I checked. Dan and Nancy Gillard were a couple friends that I met back when Dan came in the 70s to teach at the school I was teaching at. So I've known them for a very long time. They had two of their young grandchildren, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old in the car with them. A young woman crossed the line and hit them head on. I haven't had any updates, but the 2 grandchildren were fine, not a scratch. But Dan and Nancy both had life-threatening injuries, and I've just been praying for the last 2 days that they pull through. So Dan and Nancy, this candle's for you.
We sometimes forget the people in the back row.
I'm Deb, and I actually have 2, I guess they're joy cerns. They're not joys or concerns totally. Kate Howell asked me to share with you. She wishes she could be here, first of all, and she couldn't get her computer working this morning. So she is slowly recovering from her eye surgery. It was a serious procedure. It went well. She's impatient. She thought she'd bounce right back, and she's not. And she appreciates everyone who has reached out to her, and especially the care team who has been sending her emails. And we need to wish her more patience. And on that note, I also want to wish Annie Morris patience. She had foot surgery and says she was following doctor's orders, but the doctor disputed that. She was walking way too much and set herself back a little bit. She also needs, I think she's probably watching now, and she needs to stay on her couch and let the healing process happen.
I think we're finished. So are there any Zoom sorrows to share?
Yes, June, I have a few, plus a couple of joys I missed, but I'll keep with the sorrows and concerns. First is from Linda Jessen. I would like to light a candle for Peter, who is failing considerably. From Ellen McFarland. Please light a candle of sorrow for the passing of my dear friend, Darcy McGee, this week in Guelph, Canada. His health had been failing, so this was not unexpected. Some of you may remember him. Also from Joni Ward, her heart is in alignment with Joan Bellamy at this terrible time. So many walk this edge. And then two joys, also from Joni. First is joy for Michael's orchestra performance, fantastic. And also please light a candle for Paula Odom for organizing our circle supper tradition, which you keep going. Also, dear Daryl is slowly returning to us. So I guess that's 3 candles. Thank you.
We have one left. Okay, so this, oh, yeah, I see it. We need the candle.
Just read it. Go ahead and read it.
Okay. And this candle from our care team. I have no sense of direction. And this is backwards. And this candle from our care team represents the joys and sorrows we hold in silent sanctuary of our heart. We light this candle for all those unspoken joys and sorrows. Let us share a moment of silence to hold our hearts both, to hold in our hearts both the sorrows and the joys that have been shared this morning. There are many ways to be There are many ways to be of service to LCUUF. Our time, our treasure, our talents are all necessary components to a healthy fellowship. Now is the time in our service when we ask to share the treasure. When we ask through pledges and donations. Instructions for payment to the fellowship are on our website, and for people here at the fellowship, we'll pass a basket. If you are new here today and you are struggling to hold things together, let the basket pass you by. Your presence is enough for us, more than enough, and it's a gift we appreciate. And while you're considering your gifts to the fellowship, remember that each month, LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization in our lakeside community. We share 1/2 of the offerings of the collection each week that goes to the organization of the month. For the month of April, we're supporting Poco a Poco, which helps the people in San Pedro, Ixacan area. This organization supports youths and women in the indigenous area through education, teaching local organic food growth, providing food and drinking water to renal patients, feeding over 300 children 5 days a week, and offering health services as well as literacy and English as a second language. So the basket's back? Okay, so we're going to do a unison reading. So let us read these words together by the famous Indian poet, Rabindranath Tagore.
We kind of switched this up, and I was going to read this and invite you to read along with me. This same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless grades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life throb of ages, dancing in my blood this moment.
Today's reading is by Barbara Brown Taylor from her book, An Altar in the World. What is saving my life now is the conviction that there is absolutely no spiritual treasure to be found apart from the bodily experience of human life on earth. My life depends on engaging the most ordinary physical activities with the most exquisite attention I can give them. My life depends on ignoring all touted distinctions between the secular and the sacred, the physical and the spiritual, the body and the soul. Wherever you are human. Whoever you are human. Wherever you are, you live in the world, which is just waiting for you to notice the holiness in it. And now Matt will give the service.
Thank you, June. As I look back on my life, I find that one of my life tasks, as I've become more mature, I hope I have, has been getting out of my head. I've been realizing, as the Catholic writer and contemplative Richard Rohr has said, that the key to a healthy spiritual life is getting out of the top 3 inches of our body. Now, as a kid, I gave most of my attention to those top 3 inches of my body. As a kid, I remember being so convinced of the primacy of the mind that I argued one time with a friend in junior high school that anything worth learning could be learned from a book, as long as the book was well enough written. I even thought to myself that one could learn to ride a bicycle through the mind alone. Boy, was I a nerdy, geeky little intellectual back in the day when being a nerd didn't carry the Silicon Valley cachet that it does today, with its promise of big financial payoff as it has in recent times. To this teenage Matt, my body was just a vehicle for carrying my brain around. Eating and sleeping were annoying, time-consuming activities. I couldn't wait for the promise of food pills, George Jetson style. I even played around with sleep learning, that idea of learning from tape recordings at the time, played while sleeping, and of course that didn't work for me. Over time, I realized that I needed to get out of my head. Getting out of my head meant, in part, learning to deal with my mind, with that increasingly restless, anxious, and stressed out part of me. By my late 20s, my mind was increasingly confused about who I was and what I was doing. Now, religion helped a bit. After many false starts, prompted mostly by kindly but misguided evangelical Christian friends, I found my way, rather by accident, to Unitarian Universalism. For me, the Unitarian Universalism of that era was perfect. It was quite strongly focused on the mind. It was an academic religion with intellectual stimulation at the center. Some of you remember that term? Our UU world was open, certainly, to exploring other religions, but from the heights of intellect, evaluating them critically, seeking the common underpinnings of all religion. The UU movement focused on the here and now, on world affairs, on lofty goals, most expressively defined by our 7 principles, which at that time had been adopted only a few years before. Unitarian Universalism seemed to point to a larger sense of purpose in life, and this was reassuring to me. As a UU, I dabbled in other religious practices, especially meditation. That practice was full of promise as a way to ease the chatter of my mind and hopefully to allow me to follow my bliss, as Joseph Campbell put it. But meditation, just sitting there thinking about nothing, was hard, very hard, and I just couldn't seem to stay with it. Ultimately, at a UU church, of course, I was introduced to one form of meditation that I could stick with, and I practiced it for many years. Called passage meditation, it involved meditating not on nothing, but on the great texts. We meditated by silently reciting in our minds whole passages from the texts of great religious traditions, whether the Christian tradition or Eastern traditions or whatever. The words which I had memorized and then slowly recited in my mind kept my mind busy, and this meditation did help with my stress and anxiety. Only in the last decade or so have I been able to branch out to other meditation practices: mindfulness, loving kindness, insight meditation, body-based meditations like walking meditation and the body scan. And so I wanted to invite you, if you're willing right now today, to perhaps join me in a brief body scan meditation. Those of you on Zoom, if you're at home and you would like, you are welcome to lay yourselves down on a bed or on the floor. I wouldn't recommend that to the folks in this room because of the state of this floor. But anyways, get comfortably centered, and you might want to just close or soften your eyes as whatever is comfortable for you. And in this place, just notice the heaviness of your body, its weight against the surface that is supporting you. Notice in particular those parts of the body that are in contact with the chair or with the floor. And just soften into those areas. Just notice. And let's just be here now in this moment, letting go of plans, letting go of past thoughts, and just for now, meet our bodies with friendliness, observing them as they are. And let's take a little tour of our body, just experiencing the parts, letting them relax, if that's possible. Noticing what's going on without judgment, maybe hot, cold, a little bit of pain, itch, things like that. No judgment. Well, let's start with our feet. So just bring your attention to your feet. Just notice them. Allow them to relax. Notice any of those feelings, tingling, itching, warmth, coolness, whatever. And now move up into your lower legs, feeling that part of the body, relaxing. And into your knees. And now into the upper legs. That large, massive muscle, just allow it to relax. And into your abdominal region, and groin, buttocks, feeling those, allowing them to relax. Coming up towards the stomach, allowing the gut to relax a little bit too. And up into your chest. Noticing your heart, perhaps it beating, or just there. And your lungs, and the breath. Just noticing all that. Allowing relaxation to occur. And now let's move down to our hands, our fingers. Noticing them, you might want to notice from thumb down to little finger, each one, each pair, letting them relax. And now the palms of your hands and the backs of your hands, letting them relax. And your wrists, lower arms, your elbows, and letting your upper arms relax. And then coming into your shoulders, noticing those feelings there, letting them relax too. Taking a little extra moment for relaxation here. And into your neck, relaxing that. And your jaw, softening, relaxing. And your tongue, and the inside of your mouth, noticing, relaxing your face, your eyeballs, those muscles around your eyeballs. Relax. And up into the top of your head. Relaxing the scalp. And now, in your own time, just take a few sort of gentle sweeps down from the top of the body, down through your center and down towards your feet. And then back up from your feet to your head. And maybe again, just noticing and continuing to relax. And now let us return to this space, opening our eyes and coming back together again. So as I began to get out of my head and began to encounter my body, getting into my body meant that I needed to come to terms with my body, accepting it and loving it, knowing its limitations, and being grateful for its strengths. I'm sure this may have been a path for many of you. Some years ago, Liz and I traveled to Ireland, where, among other things, we had a chance to study with Christine Valtners-Paintner, an artist, poet, and spiritual teacher. I've forgotten which Catholic order she's associated with. But writing about her own body, Paintner says this. She says, "When I was 21, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, a degenerative autoimmune illness. The only other person I knew in my family who had this disease was my mother, and it had ravaged her body. I was devastated. I felt deeply betrayed by my body. In an autoimmune disease like this illness, the immune system begins to attack its own tissues. 6 years later, I had to take a year off from work and go on disability because of the pain and inflammation. That was the year I walked into a yoga class, and that was one of the paths I took back to loving my body. She asks, how many of us treat our bodies with the lavish attention that they deserve? What does it mean to treat our bodies like the temples they really are? What is the damage caused by the endless message we receive each day about our bodies' inadequacies? What if for one day we could put to rest the damaging stories we tell ourselves about how our bodies don't measure up? What if we could bring our full presence to our body's needs instead of endlessly ignoring them? Matt again. My own awareness, even love for my body, began when I increasingly depended on to do things, to hike, to camp, even to make a month-long bicycle trip. I began to care for my body, paying greater attention when I was stressing it beyond its limits. Yoga became an on and off practice for me, and then after that, I became involved with group exercise, YMCA. And then there was dance. I grew into my body through the improvisational movement and dance that is a practice called interplay, which offered me. I awakened to my body and its movement, and this gradually became a source of joy. Now, I'm pretty much a humanist at my core. My focus is on the here and now, not on the there and later. And yet my spiritual journey was calling on me to take a lot of things on faith, which is not an easy thing. I had to trust that I would get benefits from practices like meditation and yoga, energy work, and so on. Some of that faith was based on the texts of those ancients, the teachings of the Eastern religions in particular. Consider the sayings of the Buddha, for example, in the Dhammapada, which includes these lines. Hard it is to train the mind, which goes where it likes and does what it wants. But a trained mind brings health and happiness. The wise can direct their thoughts, subtle and elusive, wherever they choose. A trained mind brings health and happiness. That was a pretty solid argument for training the mind through a meditation practice. But still, I was reluctant to put too much faith stock in religious texts. Fortunately, the science was beginning to catch up, with studies showing the benefits of various kinds of embodied spiritual practices for mind, body, and health. So, for example, my willingness to stick with my early passage meditation practice was bolstered by some early studies connecting that particular practice to health benefits, including stress reduction, hypertension reduction, and resistance to infection. Similarly, yoga has been shown in clinical trials to reduce depression, anxiety, and stress, as well as improve glucose regulation, important for diabetes control. But more fundamentally, science is beginning to offer up a deeper understanding of the nature of the brain and the body as a holistic system. Now, when I was growing up, conventional wisdom divided the mind and the body into two. We were like machines. The sense organs of the body telegraphed data to the mind, in the brain, which made decisions and then commanded the body to act, to fire up the leg muscles, for example, or pump out adrenaline or whatever. The brain was primary, and that was all that really mattered. Now, these ideas continue even today, as some people hope that technology will allow them to achieve immortality, by uploading the contents of their brains to a computer somewhere. But these ideas, I think, are overly simplistic. We're figuring out the brain-body connection, that it's a little bit more complex, as this short video shows.
The brain. Every time you think, feel, or perform a multitude of unconscious processes, the 100 billion neurons in your skull conduct electrical signals to communicate and carry messages between them, ultimately creating, well, you and everything you do. It's the most complex, essential, and identifiable organ in the body, acting as the center of the nervous system in all vertebrates. But what if how you think and feel isn't just controlled by the brain and central nervous system, but in fact a second brain that you didn't know about? The brain uses the vagus nerve to connect and communicate with many parts of the body, including the vocal cords, heart, lungs, and most of the digestive tract. It also uses this nerve to convey fight or flight messages to the body, which explains why you might experience a cracking voice, racing heart, shortness of breath, and a knot in your stomach when you're really stressed or nervous. But while this extensive network is constantly sending signals from the brain to your body, scientists have noted that 80 to 90% of the nerve fibers in the enteric nervous system are actually going from the gut to the brain. In fact, the enteric nervous system, which is an extensive mesh-like network of neurons that controls your entire digestive tract from the esophagus to the anus, doesn't even require the brain at all. When the vagus nerve is severed, the enteric nervous system is capable of organizing and initiating its own reflexes for digestion because it has such a complex collection of neurons. It is your second brain and controls you far more than you realize. From an evolutionary perspective, before modern food safety protocols, our biggest choices were about eating. Is it safe? Will it make me sick? Will it give me energy? This is why we would need a direct line of communication between the gut and the brain. For example, fat and sugar are good sources of fuel for the body, so we've evolved mechanisms to notify the brain to release the feel-good neurotransmitter dopamine when we eat foods high in fats and sugars, which make us continually seek them out. But the enteric nervous system becomes even more interesting when you realize that the microbes in your gut actually produce over 50% of the dopamine found in your body and 90% of the serotonin, two neurotransmitters that drastically affect your mood, happiness, and pleasure. And these microbes can manipulate your cravings and eating behaviors for their own survival. Your diet affects which bacteria thrive, but as a result, the flourishing bacteria in your gut can then send signals to the brain via the vagus nerve to tell you to keep eating the foods that they love. This is why some scientists have suggested that treatment with probiotics or fecal transplants could be an effective therapy for overeating, by getting rid of certain bacteria that generate intense cravings for high-fat and high-sugar foods. In fact, current research is pointing to a gut with healthy microbiomes as a strong predictor of emotional and mental health. Mice raised in sterile environments where no bacteria could colonize their gut exhibit social traits similar to those seen in humans on the autism spectrum. When researchers studied their brains, they also found significant changes in the levels of serotonin and specific proteins related to learning and memory formation. But after feeding the mice with specific probiotics to help cultivate healthy microbiomes, the symptoms were alleviated. Their gut controlled their behavior. A 30-day study comparing people who ate probiotic yogurt found a decrease in the levels of anxiety and depression compared to people who consumed milk with no bacteria. And another study found that mice fed a specific bacteria had less stress-related hormones in their blood and performed better on tests of learning and memory. But when researchers severed the vagus nerve, all of these improvements disappeared. Again, their guts were in control of their emotions. Studies have even shown that stimulating the vagus nerve at different frequencies by implanting a small pacemaker can help patients with treatment-resistant depression by mimicking vagal nerve activity like a person with a healthy gut. And the essential role of the gut doesn't end there. Given that large social groups increase the potential for one's genes being passed on for both us and our bacteria, researchers now believe that the function of the microbiome is partly to promote pro-social behaviors. Healthy gut bacteria can lead to a higher resilience of negative emotions from others, which makes you more forgiving and better at fostering strong social connections, ultimately improving your shot at reproduction. All thanks to your second brain.
So not only does it seem we have another brain in our gut, that brain is in conversation. Actually, that brain is what wrote this sermon, so no. But that brain is in conversation with the creatures in our gut, which is our gut microbiome. And what we're learning is that the mind doesn't just reside in our brain, but is embodied. It's spread out. The brain in our gut definitely influences the brain in our mind and vice versa. So in a larger sense, we are learning that the mind is much more holistic, pervading perhaps our entire body. And perhaps our gut bacteria even encourage us to engage in pro-social behavior, to help, to forgive, to get along with others. Everything is connected. And what about that heady, intellectual, brain-centered Unitarian Universalism that I found so attractive 3 decades ago? I think UUs too have been able to follow Richard Rohr's advice that the key to maintaining a healthy spiritual tradition is getting out of the top 3 inches of our bodies. We UUs have broadened out from the mind, the intellect, to become a little bit more heart-centered, to the point where we have sometimes been labeled by others as the love people. We've allowed a broader range of emotions to show up in our worship on Sunday mornings. We've been willing to experiment with spiritual practice, even with ritual, and yes, sometimes even with movement on Sunday morning. I think this is healthy. We can each show up on Sunday morning with our full selves, with the hope that some part of ourselves, our minds, hearts, bodies, spirits, will find engagement, fulfillment, or solace here. Barbara Brown Taylor, an author and theologian who writes from the tradition of the Anglican faith, tells us, she says, for her, spirituality is bound up in the bodily experiences of human life on earth. She says, I quote, "In a world of too much information about almost everything bodily practices, about almost everything, comma, bodily practices can provide great relief. To make bread or love, to dig in the earth, to feed an animal or cook for a stranger, these activities require no extensive commentary, no lucid theology. All they require is someone willing to bend, reach, chop, stir. Most of these tasks are so full of pleasure that there is no need to complicate things by calling them holy. In a world where faith is often construed as a way of thinking, bodily practices remind the willing that faith is a way of life." So Taylor argues for an embodied spirituality, not a spirituality that is head-centered. She argues for a spirituality that gets you out in the world, experiencing the world, connecting with and helping others. To be a spiritual person, you simply need to be willing to bend, reach, chop, stir. In such an embodied spirituality, there is no division between the secular and the sacred, the physical and the spiritual, the body and the soul. It's all woven together, interconnected. And so our faith, our Unitarian Universalist faith, is like that too. It connects mind, body, with all things in that wonderful interconnected web of all existence, of which we, as embodied beings, are a part. We are connected with the world. In this world, we think, we feel, we act, we become more fully alive, and in so doing, we make the world more alive. That great Indian poet, Rabindranath Tagore, captures this well in that small section that we recited earlier from his epic poem, Gitanjali, which we read earlier. "The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numerous blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and in flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life. And my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment. And so, may we be made glorious in our awareness of this world of life. May we, as fully embodied beings and spiritual beings at the same time, go out to make the world more alive. Blessed be.
Our closing hymn is Wake Now My Senses. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing.
Thank you, Gary. May we, as fully embodied beings, as mind, body, gut, brain, heart, all of us, the fullness of each of us, awaken to the power of the earth, awaken to our home, woven in, not separate from the web of creation. May we, as fully embodied beings, find our ministries clear, working with others, helping, serving, to create a better world, to transform this planet by our care. May it be so. Blessed be.
Let us extinguish our chalice with these words which we read together.
Extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world.
Our postlude is Going Out of My Head, played by Gary Young.
I tried to get close to getting out of my head, and this is as close as I can get to it.
Great, thanks.
This is from the 60s, for those of us who remember the 60s.
Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in peace and with a purpose.